All right, good afternoon. This is the matter of JD, case number 24-52055NA. Present in the virtual courtroom, we have an attorney, Annette Nickel, on behalf of the Pokagon tribe. We have Father Robert Sinclair, his attorney, Dan Fagan, his guardian ad litem, Stephanie Cardenas, who is here for attorney Kendra Ortega today, the child's attorney, Roman Kasorik, various agency workers, and tribal representatives. Mr. Kasorik.
Thank you. I'm just trying to see if Miss Hall is here. I don't see her.
Ms. Hall is here.
Oh, I didn't see her on the screen. That's fine.
It looks like Ms. Tatana is going to testify. She's nodding her head.
All right.
So if you would unmute and raise your right hand. Would you state your name and spell it for the record?
My name is Mercedes, Mercedez, Tatinen, Tahtinen.
And do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Mr. Kasorik.
Thank you. Ms. Tatinen, you are employed by Catholic Charities of West Michigan?
Yes, I am the foster care supervisor for this case.
And in that case, you had the opportunity to speak with the prior worker and this current worker, Ms. Kara Hall, about this case?
Yes, I have.
And you're knowledgeable enough to testify as to the facts and circumstances? You reviewed the file?
Yes.
Wonderful. Your Honor, I have several exhibits. I believe I provided a list to the court and counsel, and I could simply list them.
That would be great.
Proposed number 1 being the case service plan with its attached PATP stated 3/17/26. As proposed number 2, behavioral specialist report dated 10/30/25 as it relates to JD. Proposed 3, foster care supportive visitation progress reports dated from 12/22/25 to 3/4/26. Proposed number 4, there are 2 on-point reports dated 1/30/26 and 3/4/26 about the progress of JD. As proposed 7, there are 2 YWCA reports addressing Mr. Sinclair and his therapy therein. One dated 1/9/26 and 3/6/26. As proposed 6, there's a CASA letter dated 3/24/26. And as proposed 7, and I did email those with my list to counsel and the court, there's a first grade report for JD. There are 2 pages of those.
Any objections to any of those proposed exhibits?
No objection.
No objection.
Thank you.
No objection on behalf of the Pokagon band.
Thank you. All right. They're all admitted.
Thank you. All right, let's start with JD. Can you provide the court with progress on JD's behavior and how he's doing?
He is doing really well. He is in first grade at Dick Street Elementary. He has a 504 plan. I have not had a chance to review the report cards, but I haven't had any reported concerns with him currently regarding his grades. He is meeting bi-weekly with his therapist through OnPoint. Things appear to be going well with that. They're working on identifying his triggers for anger, working on coping skills, identifying his feelings and regulating those. Through that therapist, he was diagnosed with PTSD and then just recently ADHD as well. So the therapist is working through those diagnoses with him as well. He has made substantial progress to the point where he no longer qualified for EFC or a behavioral specialist. So that was discharged on 3/6/2026. We also just recently got his trauma assessment approved through Samaritas. We'll be doing that, and it's scheduled for 4/16, so next month. And he's going to be doing a bonding assessment within that trauma assessment with both dad and the caregiver. And then he is up to date on his well child and dentals. He had his last child on 2/15, and there was reports that he is anemic, so he is taking iron for that. And he also has an inhaler, and he takes Zyrtec for his allergies. He does have a follow-up appointment next week to check on that, to see if that iron is still working and helping with that. And then he had his last dental in October, and there was concerns of him potentially having an underbite. So the dentist is going to follow up with that as well.
All right. How is he doing with his challenges of being aggressive at times at school that's been reported? Is it getting any better or is it about the same level?
As far as I'm aware, which is one of the reasons why EFC and behavioral specialists discharged, is there was a lot of progress and he was doing a lot better with that. There are still some continued concerns, which is why that 504 is in place to help with that.
And what does the agency have in mind about addressing those issues? What therapy or classes can he take?
Those would all be addressed either through the school or through the therapist at On Point.
Now, On Point is continuing?
Yes.
And what did they report?
They reported they just recently diagnosed him with the ADHD, and then they're working through his feelings and identifying those feelings and his triggers for anger.
Is the anger more pronounced during any specific event or time?
Not that I am aware of, but that can be explored more with the new caseworker, with the therapist, to get further information.
Any concern with his current relative and tribal placement?
No, no concerns whatsoever.
He's doing very well there, is he not?
Yes, he is.
Good. Anything else about JD?
No, not at this time.
Let's move on to Mr. Sinclair. How is he progressing in his PAA with the agency?
There's been minimal progress, I would say, during this reporting period. He is pretty resistant to most services that we refer him to. The main barriers we have for him are substance use, housing, emotional stability, and parenting skills. For substance use, he refuses all screens. We do have him signed up for random screening, but he has not done any during this reporting period. For emotional stability, he's working with the YWCA therapist. However, the therapist did report that they have not had a session since February 5th. And she was needing him to complete some paperwork by yesterday. I haven't been able to confirm with her if he did turn that paperwork in, but she did state if he didn't turn that paperwork in, that he would need to be discharged from their program. So the new worker will follow up with her to make sure we have that information. And then the neuropsych was approved for funding. We just need to get it scheduled. There are some concerns with how resistant he has been to services and how reluctant he was to provide information during his psych eval, that he may not attend the neuropsych or may not even provide information if he does attend. So the worker did report that she would be able to transport Mr. Sinclair to the visit or to the neuropsych appointment, but he has not confirmed with her on a date or time that would work to be able to get that scheduled.
And that is, if I could interrupt quickly, and that is a concern because even in his psychological, the examiner had noted that he was very guarded with information for the psychologist, correct?
Correct. And the psychologist reported that due to the fact that they didn't have enough information with him being so guarded, they couldn't make a full diagnosis, but they did state that they thought there may be a mental illness suspected, so they recommended we get further assessment.
And that would help at least the agency and everybody to resolve that issue, correct?
Correct. If he were to attend that and comply and engage with that assessment, yes.
All right, so we have really no progress in drug testing by Mr. Sinclair. He refuses all of them, correct?
Correct.
He is working at, I believe, a pizza place.
We were able to confirm that he actually is no longer working with Domino's in Kalamazoo. The worker was able to call and confirm that he doesn't work there anymore. Mr. Sinclair did provide today an email stating that he has new employment today at an auto parts store where he'll be working from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m., which will be a problem as well moving forward with his visits with JD, because he was typically visiting after JG gets out of school on Thursdays, I believe it was moved to Thursdays. It was Wednesdays, but now Thursdays. So the visits may need to be adjusted if that is in fact his new work schedule.
And as long as you're speaking about visits, can you tell us how his parenting time goes with JD?
Yes, there are no major concerns reported during parenting times. He is working with a foster care supportive visitation coach that supervises his visits and then does like a parenting class with him each week. He started that back in September. It's typically an 18-week program. However, as of 3/4, he was on week 11. So he is behind in completing that program. They reported he should have been able to complete it in January. And then the visitation coach noted in her reports that Mr. Sinclair seems to not fully understand how his actions affect JD or the case in general. And then she also recently reported last week, she thought that he may have been under the influence during the visit, but that has not been able to be confirmed because he won't complete drug screens.
If he shows up for his parenting time and the agency feels he's visibly impaired under some substance, is the agency willing and able to cancel the visit?
We can do that. It's just difficult because we want him to be able to get those parenting classes. She reported that he said he was really lightheaded and he was not like his thoughts were all over the place. So she couldn't confirm or deny whether or not he was under the influence. She was just concerned with the way that he was acting during the visit. And that was on 3/26, so last Thursday.
Also, in the domestic relations, domestic violence issues, he is not attending the Y counseling very often, is he?
Right. The therapist reported that their last session was on February 5th. And he also continues to state to the worker that he was never involved in any DV and he doesn't need to participate in those programs. However, we do know that DV was a part of his history.
That's not how it was worded. That's not how it was
Mr.
worded
Sinclair,
at all.
this is not at a time. This is not a time for you to speak. Okay.
Thank you. I see that by looking at the two Y reports, one from January and one from March, there were most of these sessions were missed by Mr. Sinclair, correct?
Correct.
And that is one of the concerns, correct?
Correct. The therapist did report if the paperwork that she needed him to do wasn't completed by yesterday, that she would need to be discharging him. So we're trying to confirm today with her if he did turn the paperwork in. I don't know.
The neuropsych is in progress. I see that Pine Rest Brains needs to provide an invoice in your report. What's that about? Can you explain that?
Yeah, we were able to get an estimate from Brains and Pine Rest. That's where the neuropsych will be taking place. So the funding was approved. That it is a major cost, and if he no-shows to the appointment, DHS said they wouldn't cover it, which is if he no-shows, it's $1,400 at least if he no-shows. So we're talking with our agency program manager to confirm that we can still get that scheduled, as well as figuring out a time that the worker and Mr. Sinclair would be able to coordinate the worker getting him to that appointment.
All right. So Mr. Sinclair is currently has informed you that he has found employment. So you're just waiting for confirmation of that?
Yeah, he did send the worker this morning email proof that he does start his new job today.
You will follow up on that, though?
Yes, we'll continue to monitor and request pay stubs from him for that job.
Another area of need for Mr. Sinclair is housing. Can you tell the court about where we are in that?
Yes. So he is still reporting to be homeless. His housing voucher was received and he is currently looking for apartments. The worker reported to me this morning, though, that Mr. Fagan was able to said that Dad was able to get housing and is signing a lease and can potentially move in on Friday. We haven't been able to confirm that with Dad. When the worker talked with him just recently, he said he didn't have anything. So we'll need to confirm with Dad that that still is the plan for Friday.
So overall, his, I think, compliance with the parent agency agreement and his progress has been rated as what, poor, partial?
I would say poor, with him being potentially discharged from YWCA and the concerns that foster care supportive visitation is reporting.
All right, and likewise with his refusal to do any drug screens,
Correct.
lack of housing throughout this case, and likewise with the employment. And speaking of employment, has anybody run a budget with Mr. Sinclair?
I do not know when the last budget was completed. I believe one has been done in the past, but with this new job, a new budget would need to be done anyway.
Okay. Can you tell the court about some of the active efforts that because this is an ICWA case that the agency had provided to the family?
Yes, so we're maintaining the travel placement, and then we are transporting Jackson to and from visits when possible and working with the caregiver to make sure that those are happening. We've offered to work with Dad for the neuropsych to transport him to that appointment. As for the visits, typically our policy is if a parent is 15 minutes late, the visit is canceled. However, we have allowed Mr. Sinclair a leeway of 20 minutes to ensure that visits can still happen if he is late. We've offered bus passes to him as well to help with transportation, and he often asks for visits to be moved either from Kalamazoo or to the Grand Rapids. So we've accommodated that for him on whichever location works better for him that week. We've moved visits back and forth between Kalamazoo and Grand Rapids.
And if he needs transportation to those visits, does the agency provide him with transportation?
Yeah, we've provided gas cards or offered gas cards and bus passes for him to be able to get to and from those visits.
Okay. Anything else about this case that we may have missed?
Yeah, one thing regarding the trauma assessment, they require a release of information to be signed for the trauma team to be able to talk with JD's therapist. And Dad has refused to sign that. So the agency would be requesting ability to sign that release of information so that the therapist can talk with the trauma assessment team.
So
Dad has been pretty resistant with signing any documentation or things like that. He hasn't signed any of his treatment plans with us currently. So potentially we would be requesting the agency to be able to consent for any medication if that gets prescribed for his ADHD or any higher level of care if that's recommended through the trauma assessment.
So at this time, are you requesting that the court order that the release of information be provided to the agency?
Yeah, either Dad sign it or the agency be able to sign it because we want the therapist to be able to talk with the trauma team, especially with the assessment being scheduled on 4/16.
Let me interrupt a moment. Typically, the court would authorize the lawyer guardian ad litem for the child to do that. Does that work for the agency if that becomes necessary?
Yes, that is fine, okay. Just as long as someone can sign.
Thank you, Your Honor. Anything else? I
don't believe that's I think that's everything. I don't think there's anything else.
Right. How long let me ask you this, how long has JD been in care?
He was removed on 12/2 of 2024, so that's roughly 16 months or 485 days.
Will the return of JD back to the parent cause a substantial risk of harm to JD's life, physical health, or mental well-being?
Yes.
Why is that?
Due to the lack of progress with Mr. Sinclair on his treatment plan, and the concerns of substance use, and his lack of ability of parenting skills as evidenced in the foster care supportive visitation reports, the agency would be highly concerned with JD returning home to dad at this time.
Is it in JD's best interest then to initiate termination proceedings?
The agency was unable to speak with the prosecutors about this. We would be requesting another PPH unless the courts determined that a goal change at this time at this hearing would be appropriate, but we were unable to meet with everyone to discuss that before this hearing.
So let me ask the question again. Is it in JD's best interest today to initiate termination proceedings?
In my professional opinion, yes.
Thank you. Has the out-of-home placement followed the reasonable and prudent parenting standard as defined in the statute? And JD had the regular opportunity to engage in age or developmentally appropriate activities. And with that, you can also probably add in his tribal involvement and activities by the tribe.
Yes, the caregiver has provided that. He is in school regularly. He is placed with cousins, so he has a lot of interaction with his family. And his family is a tribal placement. They are tribal members. They utilize tribal services such as the well child and dentist. Those are all through the tribe.
Thank you. What are your recommendations?
It is respectfully recommended that JD remain in an out-of-home placement in a licensed foster home or with an approved relative caregiver, that Mr. Sinclair comply with his parent agency treatment plan, that Mr. Sinclair participate in supervised visits with JD, that the GAL be able to consent and sign any releases of information or mental health care needed for JD, and that JD's goal be changed to adoption as appropriate, and that a permanency planning or termination hearing be scheduled in 90 days.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nickel.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to say your name wrong. It was very simple. Tatana. Tatana. Thank you. Did I say that right?
A little bit. Okay. It's okay.
I'm so sorry. It was really simple. Just a few more questions to follow up, Mr. Kosoriak. With respect to the, he asked you about active efforts. You've also been, or perhaps Ms. Peters was in regular contact with Kristen Black from the Pokagon Band. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. After the last hearing, Ms. Peters set up regular weekly contact with Ms. Black to ensure that the tribe was up to date on everything that was happening, and that has continued with the new worker. She has regular contact with Ms. Black.
Part of that is not only just to update, but also to confer with, to determine whether there's any other services that can be made available to either Mr. Sinclair or Jackson. Excuse me, I'm sorry, Your Honor, JD?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. With respect to Mr. Sinclair's new job, do you know where that is? Is it in Grand Rapids or Kalamazoo or someplace other than that?
I don't know specifically where it was. He sent the email to Ms. Hall that he had email confirmation of the employment this morning. So I wasn't able to confirm on where the job is, but she will follow up with him on all of that.
Okay. And with respect to the apartment that he may be signing a lease on Friday, again, do you have any idea of where that might be?
I do not have any idea, but
Okay.
again, the worker will follow up and provide that information.
Okay. Part of the service plan that Mr. Sinclair has been ordered to follow requires him to work on housing and to let you or the worker know where he's living. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, because you're going to need to take a look at it and make sure that it's appropriate for JD. Is that right?
Yes, we are required by policy to see parental residences at least once every quarter.
Okay. But Mr. Sinclair has not been cooperative in providing you any type of information about his housing, correct?
Correct. When we asked recently, I think this week or last week, he stated he didn't have anything to Ms. Hall, but then Ms. Hall was able to talk to Mr. Fagan and he reported differently.
Okay. And it was Ms. Hall or Ms. Peters from your agency who helped Mr. Sinclair get the voucher for housing. Is that right?
Yeah, it was, I'm trying to remember exactly when it was done. I know I sat down with one of them and helped Mr. Sinclair fill it out. Ms. Hall was the previous worker before Ms. Peters, so she's very familiar with what's going on with this case. She's just back on it again. So she was previously on it, so I can't remember if it was her or if it was Ms. Peters that actually sat down and helped him fill it out. But we did sit down with him and filled out the whole application packet with him.
Okay. Is Mr. Sinclair aware that there will be a trauma assessment for his son?
Yes, he is aware. He knows when the appointment is. He knows he's supposed to go so that he can do that bonding assessment with JD during that appointment. But when Ms. Hall asked him to sign a release so that the therapist could talk to the trauma team, he refused.
Has Mr. Sinclair refused to participate in the trauma assessment?
Not that I'm aware of. He did state that he would go and do the bonding assessment, but he refused to sign the papers.
Okay. And the trauma assessment is really important to understand where next to go with Jackson so that he can get the best service. Yes, I am so sorry. To go with JD so that he can get the best services. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And that's also the reason for having another assessment of Mr. Sinclair is to make sure that the kinds of services that are being recommended are the right ones and the best ones for him. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, the psychological evaluation couldn't really provide us with a lot of recommendations due to the fact that Mr. Sinclair didn't disclose a lot during his evaluation. So we are hoping that during this neuropsych, he will be more forthcoming in all of the information they request from him.
And really, you're not asking for all of this information from Mr. Sinclair to be nosy. Is that right?
Correct. We just
Right.
want to be able to provide appropriate services for him.
Right. And to determine whether or not it's safe to return his son to him. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And really, it's not about us returning, but for the judge to have the right kind of information to make that decision. Correct. Yes. And if Mr. Sinclair continues to not provide any information and continues to not support his son getting the right kinds of assessments, you can't give the information to the judge that might support the son being JD being returned to his dad. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Are you and your agency, are you going to continue working with the Pokagon band and checking in to see if there's any additional services that can be offered through the band or anywhere else? And I guess that might depend on where Mr. Sinclair chooses to live, but any other services, you'll be continuing with the Pokagon band. Is that right?
Yes, we will continue to work with Ms. Black.
Okay, great. I have nothing further at this time. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Fagan.
Thank you, Your Honor. There's been several mentions of the fact that my client has not taken drug tests, has declined to take drug tests, and that's been true for all of the last review hearing, correct?
Yes, I believe the last one he did was either in November or the beginning of December. I can't remember the exact date of his last screen that he did for us.
And he's been offered multiple opportunities to take drug tests and has declined each time?
Yes, he is offered during parenting times to do drug screens, as well as he is signed up for random twice weekly screens through forensic fluids. And he is aware of that he's supposed to be calling to check if his color is called. He is aware of what his color is, what number he needs to call, and he has not done any of those random screens with forensic fluids.
I know that you have, but I'd just like it to be very clear. You or your agency and the other workers have no doubt explained to my client that his failure to take tests and essentially for you to not know whether he's drug free makes it essentially impossible for you to return a child to his care. Just that alone, correct?
Yes, and he is aware that any refused screens or missed screens through the random screens are considered positive in the court's eyes.
And that a considered positive is going to be, at least normally, would be sufficient for the court to determine that they can't return a child to that parent's care, correct?
Correct.
So we don't know what he would be testing positive for, if anything, correct?
Correct.
You have tried more than once to get him to understand that how important this is.
I know I personally had a conversation with him when I was supervising at the end of one visit I supervised. And I know both workers have had that conversation with him.
Does there appear to be a lack of understanding on my client's part about the effect of his refusal to test?
Yes, I believe so. I mean, the psychological evaluation suggested that, as well as the foster care supportive visitation that is meeting with him weekly for visits has also reported that they do not feel like he understands how his actions affect this case or JD.
Is there anything you can think of that would assist Mr. Sinclair in coming to a better understanding, a sufficient understanding of his obligations?
I honestly think if he completes the neuropsych to the best of his ability, it can not only help us, but also himself understand what would help him, like to understand himself better to get that report. Because we will go over that full report with him once we get the neuropsych eval back. And just for him to be able to understand himself better and what he needs to do to live a better life in general with JD or not with JD. I think the neuropsych, if he is willing to engage in that and participate and provide all the information requested of him, I think that evaluation would be very beneficial for him.
However, it would be fair to say that he's been very reticent to give you information, and he has not. Has he committed to show up for this assessment?
He has not. Ms. Hall has asked, because we just got it approved with funding, I think last week. So she did ask, she's like, when would we be able to schedule this? I can transport you, and he hasn't responded to her.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you. Mr. Kasorek, any follow-up?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Nickel, any follow-up?
No, thank you, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Any additional witnesses, Mr. Kasorek?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Nickel, any witnesses?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Fagan, any witnesses?
No, Your Honor, although I do know my client is present. I have not asked him if he wants to speak. I would normally not want him to speak without speaking with me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Statements, Mr. Kasorek.
Thank you, Your Honor. I did have the opportunity to visit with JD in his current placement. It's always been appropriate. That placement really takes good care of this young man. I'm still concerned about the issue of some aggression. However, it seems to have subsided lately. That's what has been reported to me. That's a big plus. At this time, this young man needs some stability and permanence in his life. I think that in the professional opinion of Ms. Tatana, when she said that in her professional opinion, which should move towards termination, I am leaving that decision up to the court to see if the court would order that, or if we can set this matter up for another permanency planning hearing. This child has been in placements for 15 months at this time, or even longer. So I think this child needs permanence. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nichol?
Thank you, Your Honor. The court may recall that at our last hearing, I was somewhat critical of the agency, and I want to say that I think they have done a wonderful job in this reporting period. And during our last family team meeting, I did have the chance to personally say that to Ms. Peters before she left the agency. I think that there's been a real turnaround and follow-up on trying to get these reports to us, and also to provide information so that not only we have a better idea, but so the court has a better idea of what is actually going on. And I think it's really important to note that Mr. Sinclair has some wins in this. He seems to always be able to have employment, and that's something that we don't always see. He seems to be someone who's able to get a job, and perhaps this is a job that betters himself. And he does seem to have a very warm and loving relationship with JD by reading the facilitated parenting time reports. The problem is that an hour or 2 hours a week is simply not enough for us to understand how he would be in a crisis, or how he would be if JD needed something. He's simply not progressing to a point where the Pokagon band feels comfortable with unsupervised parenting time. Mr. Sinclair refuses to sign releases, and one has to wonder what would happen if JD needed some very serious medical care. Would there be an argument there, and would JD's health be compromised because of that? So while there have been some wins, the Pokagon band encourages Mr. Sinclair to just cooperate. If his goal is to have his son returned, we're at the last hour here, and it's really important to not only be cooperative, but to seek out Ms. Hall and ask for the help, and ask, just to be on time, to sign releases, to do everything in his power to be able to do so. None of us are snooping into his personal life. Under the law, we can't send any of this stuff out to anyone else, and frankly, we're all so busy, none of us want to talk about it with anybody else. The information is requested to assist Mr. Sinclair and to assist his son in their relationship. So I would encourage Mr. Sinclair to just cooperate, even though it doesn't feel comfortable. It probably doesn't feel comfortable to any parent, but this is the way things can get done. With respect to JD, I appreciate all of the information that we've been given, including even his teacher's reports. He seems to be doing really well based upon the history of this case. It does not surprise me that there is some aggression, but I'm thrilled to know that the trauma assessment was finally scheduled. And in that vein, Your Honor, I want to acknowledge Mr. Jason Cross, who is the state manager for ICWA compliance and race equity at the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. When we were in the FTM and we understood that nothing was happening on the trauma assessment for no good reason, I just reached out to Mr. Cross, and he reached out to his colleagues, and I think we had it approved within a day. So all of that credit goes strictly to Jason Cross. I just sent the right email, but and Mr. Cross is available to anybody at MDHHS, as well as the agency at the partner agencies, because he is a part of MDHHS. So I'm thrilled to know that will be done. I would hope that we hold off on any kind of medication until we have that full assessment, because I think that would give a broad range, knowing how they do those assessments. I also asked the court to and the Pokagon band does support a finding of active efforts. I think there's so many things that have been done in this reporting period, and really have been done consistently, but it's, the facilitated parenting time, transportation, allowing additional time for Mr. Sinclair to get to the visits, communicating on a regular basis with the Pokagon band through Ms. Black. We've had FTMs that have included all of us. We have looked at his placement is consistent with MCL 712B.23, and his placement has been maintained. We have looked at we've been receiving his grades. And I think that there's just an overall feeling that whatever can be done in this case is being done. And so I really support the court making that finding and would compliment the agency for all of the work that's been done to get us to this point. So for those reasons, Your Honor, the Pokagon band does support a finding of active efforts. The Pokagon band does support this placement as being consistent with the Michigan Indian Family Preservation Act. And as to what to do next, Your Honor, I always explain it this way: the Pokagon band is a government, and because we're a government, we have some internal systems that have to be done if we're ever going to take that next step on deciding whether or not parental rights ought to be terminated. It doesn't mean that the court can't do it, but we would have an answer by the next review hearing. At this point, I can't take a position on that, but would certainly defer to the court. Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Cardenas.
Thank you. Your Honor, we do support the recommendation for another permanency planning hearing. Mr. Sinclair is adequately represented by Mr. Fagan, and the recommendations are not against his best interest if we look at a permanency planning hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fagan.
Yes, I think another permanency planning would be appropriate, particularly since we've got a neuropsych scheduled, which the agency is saying would be very significant in assisting them in assisting him. So without that tool in place, I don't think that it's appropriate. I think it would be premature to move to another determination. So I would ask the court schedule another permanency planning here. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The court finds that the lawyer guardian ad litem has complied with the requirements of the statute. That returning this child to a parent today would cause a substantial risk of harm to his life, physical health, or mental well-being, that he should not be returned to a parent, that the child has been in foster care for 15 of the most recent 22 months, and the agency should not initiate proceedings to terminate parental rights to the child at this time for the compelling reasons that we have not yet had the neuropsych completed for the father in this case. This is an ICWA case, and we need to jump through a few more hoops. The tribe has their own processes that need to be followed, and the court wants to respect that. Reasonable efforts have been made to preserve and reunify the family, make it possible for this child to safely return home to a parent. That in accordance with the statute, progress towards alleviating or mitigating the conditions that cause this child to be placed or remain in temporary foster care, unfortunately has not been made by Mr. Sinclair. That this child's continued placement is necessary and appropriate as meeting this child's needs, that the needs of the child can be met in a foster family home, that this child is an Indian as defined in MCR 3.002 sub 12, and placement remains appropriate and does comply with MCR 3.967F. The child is Indian, and the court finds that active efforts have been made to provide remedial services and rehabilitative programs designed to prevent the breakup of the Indian family. That reasonable efforts have been made to finalize the court-approved permanency plan of return to a parent for JD. That the permanency planning goal remains appropriate. That the department, foster home or institutional placement, has followed the reasonable and prudent standard, and that this child has had regular opportunities to engage in age or developmentally appropriate activities. The court orders that this child continue in the protective and temporary custody of the court, continue placement with the department for care and supervision. That Mr. Sinclair comply with and benefit from the case service plan that he signed, and this is a continuing order. It's been in place previously, that he is to sign any necessary releases for himself or for his child. That Mr. Sinclair's parenting time is at the discretion of the department to allow unsupervised or supervised parenting time by its designee. Continue the order that the child's therapist provide the court updates before each hearing. Continue the order for the trauma assessment and a neuropsych evaluation for Mr. Sinclair to be scheduled ASAP. Also, the court authorizes the lawyer guardian ad litem, the child's attorney, to sign any necessary releases of information and any medical authorizations for the child in the absence of a parent doing so if they fail to comply. And we will have another permanency planning hearing in 90 days. Ms. Gibson, do we have that date?
Yes, Your Honor, June 17th from 9:30 to 10:30.
Any conflicts with that date or time?
No, Your Honor, not for me.
All right, and Mr. Sinclair, I don't see you on the screen, but I do see your square there. Just really want to encourage you to comply with the drug testing and definitely go to that trauma assessment for the bonding assessment. That's probably that and your neuropsych evaluations. Those are the two things that you need to do if you want this child to get back in your care. Okay. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.